Prey! Released in 2017, Prey is a sort of spiritual successor to the 2006 game of the same name that I have made a video about previously. And that is about where the similarities end. Still, as much as I enjoyed its predecessor, I figured, hey, I might as well try this new one out and see how it went, and I've gotta say, it's a lot of fun. Prey sets you as Morgan Yu, a scientist focused on consciousness and artificial intelligence, getting ready to join the TranStar Company's research team aboard their orbiting vessel Talos 1. But soon, you realize that not all is what it seems. Spoilers follow, obviously, and the game came out in 2017, so, get with the times. You soon wake up to find that you have actually already been aboard Talos for 3 years, and the mysterious creatures that have been researched on this vessel, the shape-shifting Typhon, have broken containment and wreaked havoc. With most of the crew dead and the status of the station deteriorating, it's up to you to either destroy the station and prevent an outbreak, or detonate a neurological destructor device called a null wave that will destroy the Typhon but preserve the research. That is a very brief plot summary, and now let's talk about the other cool or unique elements that make Prey what it is. First, let's talk about the Typhon. The Typhon are an incredibly scary enemy. The weakest and by far most common are the mimics, which, as you might assume from their name, can mimic things, specifically objects. They can perfectly imitate any object. Yes, any. This includes banana peels or office chairs or weapons or turrets or trash cans or anything else. And until you get a certain in-game item, you can't detect them. Occasionally they'll twitch and move, and if you're fast enough you can see that. But otherwise, you have no idea whether the cigar you're about to pick up is a cigar or a mimic. This was a really good decision to include this enemy. The mimics are a really scary enemy because they can be anywhere. It really makes you stop and think and sort of creep around rather than just bull your way through the entire game like you're playing Doom or Halo or something else. The mimics can also do some pretty heavy damage if they catch you unaware, and they are scary. I can't tell you how many times that I was running and I'm like, ooh, an item on the ground that I want or some resource that I need, and I go to pick it up and all of a sudden it whips me with one of its weird tentacle leg things, and I am suddenly jumping out of my skin and whacking everything with a wrench everywhere I go. The other Typhon types are good enemies in their own ways. There are mind control ones that surprisingly control minds, leaving the player with the moral dilemma of, do I kill this innocent person who's being mind controlled or not? There are robot control ones that control robots and turrets, and they can also disable weapons, which makes fighting them pretty difficult, especially if you're in space, because they just also disable your jetpack and your directional capability, so you're just left drifting aimlessly out into space. The Nightmare is truly a nightmare, but is really not as hard as I thought it would be. From the stuff I read online before I bought the game, I thought the Nightmare was going to be basically impossible, and it turns out that it's actually pretty easy to beat him, and you can usually just cheese it if you really want to. Get on the other side of a doorway that it can't fit through, or hide behind a wall or whatever, and it's either a timer for a couple of minutes, or you can really just kill it fairly easily with a bunch of the different weapons. The other enemies are fun, but they're not really that notable. Overall, the Typhon are a powerful, terrifying enemy that is often better to avoid or disable than to engage directly. Fortunately, the station affords you lots of opportunities to do just that. The Talos station is aesthetically designed to be a pseudo-1950s luxury liner cosmetic style. Speaker boxes are found along many of the rooms, as well as ashtrays and accompanying cigars, lush furniture, and big, broad desks. The rooms are a variety of big and open, mixed with narrow but functional corridors, and the whole station has cramped service access hatches, scrunched ceiling catwalks, and lots of hiding places for you and for the Typhon. Overall, the 1950s theme felt somewhat unnecessary to me, and like a bit of an afterthought. It didn't really add anything to the story, but it didn't take anything away either. I feel like it was really just thrown on at the end, or maybe in the beginning, I don't know. I feel like it was really just thrown on as sort of a, well, this needs to be some kind of theme, so let's make it 1950s. It doesn't really fit with the rest of the story. Again, it doesn't take anything away, but it just was a good opportunity that could have been used to add a lot of depth and flavor that ended up just sort of falling flat, in my opinion. However, the physical layout of the station did add a lot of depth to the game, especially when playing on harder difficulties. There are lots of small hiding places that you end up making a lot of use of under desks and under platforms and walkways, You have ceiling access via the glue gun, which gives a really fun sort of 3D layer to the maps. Not only are you limited to the pathways that you can actually just walk on or stack boxes to, but you can shoot a line up the wall of this glue stuff and climb up it and get up to an area that you wouldn't otherwise be able to access. Flying in space is awesome in this game. It is so much fun, and the makers did a great job of accurately scaling the station so that you can see just how big it has to be to support all of these different rooms and areas that you end up exploring in the game. It really feels big. It feels like a big space, and to navigate it is kind of a daunting thing, especially when you're out floating around in zero-G. You definitely get the sense that, hey, if I go too far, I will just float off into nothingness. But flying is just really fun. They did a great job with the 3D mechanics of how you move around in space. I really enjoyed myself. There are also lots of hidden things to find around the exterior of the station, as well as stuff that's just sort of drifting about nearby. There are also lots of terrifying enemies just out there, and they can come upon you very surprisingly. So be ready for that. The environment plays a huge role in the story and how you interact with the game, and I really think they did a solid job on making it a fun and engaging part of the game. The environments also allow you the ability to solve problems in multiple unique ways so that you can do things differently each playthrough. You don't have to take the hacking skill in order to get through every door. You don't have to take the strength skill in order to push all the barriers out of the way. There's lots of ways that you can solve the problems, which is a really fun aspect to this game. I find that oftentimes, as much as I enjoy games like Portal, once you figure the puzzle out, you figured the puzzle out. It doesn't have a lot of replayability aside from the humor and fun in Portal. But in this game, I played through twice back to back because I had so much fun figuring out how can I approach these problems in different ways. As far as the weapons and abilities go, the weapons are mostly pretty standard. You get a silenced pistol, a shotgun. The Q-beam is one that's pretty neat. Any gun that makes enemies explode is neat, but I found that I didn't end up using it very often. It just seemed much more efficient for me to pull out the shotgun and blast away, rather than craft and carry around a bunch of extra ammunition for this gun that, yeah, maybe it can do a little more damage against certain enemies, but it just seemed a little unnecessary to me. The shotgun, or whatever it's called, is pretty useless unless you really want to avoid hurting the mind-controlled people, or if you have a lot of problems with the turrets turning against you or those kinds of things, you can use it to stun them. But overall, I dumped it every time I got it. There's also a Nerf gun, which is not technically a weapon, I don't think, but you can use it to push buttons on things that are out of reach. So, neat, I guess, if you're going human. The grenades are cool looking. The recycler charges are really awesome, but other than that, you're better off using basically anything else to try to fight the enemies. The Typhon lure is a type of grenade you can use. I have never been able to get it to work a single time, and it doesn't last long enough, even if you could, to actually make it useful. So it's just not very useful. The null wave, it has its purposes with specific types of enemies, but again, overall, you're better off just shooting everything if you're gonna fight. So that's the weapons. However, the abilities are rad. The human abilities, if you can basically either go human or Typhon. The human abilities are fairly straightforward. You get more health, you move faster, you can lift more, throw items harder, do more damage with weapons, hack, repair, all that usual human stuff. The Typhon abilities, however, are super, super cool. You can mimic, you can fulfill your dreams of becoming a coffee cup and rolling under a broken door, or transforming into an office chair and creeping around behind while some Typhon patrol for you. It's awesome. It's so cool to be able to just transform into one of these objects. You also get fire, kinetic energy, electricity, and I'm pretty sure that's like half the Planeteers at this point. Go Planet! Planeteers at this point. You can mind control things. You can even create phantoms from the corpses of other crew members that you find along the way, which admittedly is a little grim, but hey, you get a phantom that fights on your side. How cool is that? Okay, so the Typhon abilities definitely have the cool factor, but are they actually useful? I would say mostly. I played through the game twice, once full Typhon and once full human, and the game was significantly easier as a human. You reach a point where your weapons do so much damage and you have so much health that you can pretty much just blast your way through every single encounter without issue. This is fun, but it takes away from the scary horror aspect of the game and makes it feel a lot more like Doom or Halo or something like that, instead of a story that has and develops characters and explores complex ideas. Contrarily, going Typhon, you end up relying on a mix of your abilities abilities and the environment and a bunch of other things to help yourself handle all of these encounters and avoid getting blown to smithereens every time you find an enemy. I liked the Typhon abilities a lot more, but the gameplay was significantly easier playing just full human. So let's talk about the characters and the ideas presented in Prey. The protagonist, like most games, doesn't have a lot of their own personality so that the player can make the decisions they want to without fear of the story not matching up down the line. Games can give the protagonist character, they can give them a personality if you look at games like Control, for example, but it's not really a big deal in this game. I mean, I kind of expected that. It's kind of what you come to expect with a lot of games lately. However, all of that said, I found myself liking Morgan in both playthroughs. I really liked the character. I wanted them to succeed in the end, not just because I was playing, but because I liked who they were. Alex, your brother in the game, does have a personality, and the way they tell the story very cleverly reveals different aspects of it at different times, with each reveal helping you to understand the reasoning behind his decisions more and more. I was very surprised at the level of character development for Alex. Most games tend to phone it in for NPCs. They don't really have any kind of idea of where the character is going, and if they do have an idea, they don't really care to explore that or develop it or actually execute that idea. And Prey did a great job of showing Alex as a nuanced character, as a fully fleshed out human being who has desires and drives, but he also has fears and things that hold him back and keep him from making those decisions that he knows he needs to make. He also makes decisions that are not just based on immediate gain, like any classic typical villain. He instead does things that think about the long-term consequences of his actions and their impact on other people. There are a few other NPCs that get interesting bits and pieces thrown together that add a bit of depth to them, but most of the development for the characters in the story is found through audio logs and emails. Now, this isn't a bad way to tell a story per se, but it really depends on players seeking those things out. If they don't look, or if they just open and close the email super fast to get the notification to go away, the player won't actually learn that information. They'll check off the box in the quest log, but they're not actually going to know what's going on. This isn't the end of the world, right? This is an okay way to tell a story, but I feel like if you aren't interested in exploring and finding every little thing, you're going to miss out on a lot of what makes Prey work as a story, and I think that is kind of bad. Of course, you don't want to just have a giant monologue at the beginning or end, or a bunch of cutscenes that force the player to stop and learn things. You want to let the player play the game, just especially in a game like this, but I feel like a lot of it could have been improved through interactions with other characters rather than just finding hidden things. Most of the NPCs serve to put the player in morally difficult positions, which I absolutely love. Too many games give players ultra simple solutions. You either kill this guy or you kill that guy, or you kill this guy or you don't do anything at all. Prey forces you to consider the ramifications of your actions, not only on the people that are physically in close proximity to you, but also other people in different areas of the station and those on or heading to Earth. There's one decision the player must make that really stood out to me as a great example of this. The player must choose between allowing a potentially contaminated shuttle to land on Earth and possibly spread the Typhon there, or destroying the shuttle full of innocent people in space and preventing the potential outbreak. If the player is nosy, they can find notes and audio logs of some of the people that are on the shuttle that humanize them a little more, which makes the decision even more difficult. This decision was really challenging, and it made me really think about, well, what is the right choice? You add on top of that the ticking clock that is running because the shuttle's eventually going to get there, and I think you have 2 or 3 minutes in the game, and it really puts the pressure on to make a decision. And that decision impacts how you are viewed by other characters that find out about it later on. Mostly it's just an interesting thought experiment. I mean, what do you do in that kind of situation? I really enjoyed those kinds of moral quandaries in this game. I'll say also the game lays a rich foundation for exploring ideas of consciousness and debate about existential reality that unfortunately they don't get explored very well. There are lots of bits and pieces scattered around the game world, magazines, books, emails, notes, etc., that start to discuss things like this, but they don't really ever deliver or materialize into an interesting debate. I definitely got the feeling as I was playing that no one, either characters in the game or people in the development team, were willing to take a firm stance on the topic, and so they didn't quite know how to approach it. And instead, they ended up just sort of waffling around and vaguely presenting concepts and theories without standing on any of them, without being convicted to one idea or another. They just sort of said, this is neat, and that's also neat. That may sound harsh, I don't mean it to, but that's the reality of my experience in the game. It just seemed like really indecisive and uncertain. Admittedly, a video game is probably not the best medium to approach concepts of existential reality, so it's not a big deal, but it would have been nice to see them say something about it. You know, video games are an art and they could have included something like that. So overall, should you buy or get your hands on a copy of Prey? I would say definitely, if you like exploratory, slower paced games. It's important to note, Prey is not Doom. It is not Dead Space either. It's a fun, creepy game that will challenge you and force you to think differently in order to solve its problems. It isn't this action-filled rampage through slaughtering aliens left and right. It's also not gonna be the scariest thing you'll ever experience, but it is a lot of fun. I had an absolute blast playing Prey, and I think it's only around like 20 bucks now on Steam, and it has some DLC, so I would say give it a shot. But as always, I am just some guy on the internet. I don't know anything, so take my opinion for what it is. It's just that of some dude. But I will see you in the next video.